I don't need a gratitude practice. I can live in gratitude.
Mm.
So that was the revolution for me. That was also revolutionary for me, at least, because that is a completely different way of being than the person who just has 10 things to be grateful for every night and doesn't feel any of it. Manifesting is, essentially being intentional in your life, designing your life, creating your life, working with the universe and God and a higher power.
What do you seek in your heart?
Mm.
And your technique really is that, obviously
Oh,
drawn out a bit. It's when you talk about it, and I want you to talk about this from your perspective. But the one thing I've kind of really began to live is that we call it the breathing prayer, right? That every breath is a prayer. I welcome to Unlocking the Miracles Within. I'm your host, Jeffrey McDonald. I'm here with the amazing and beautiful Shantini Raja. We're going to be discussing the role of gratitude in activating miracles. And I've known Shantini for some years now. She's a beautiful soul. You know when you first meet her. So you all in the audience here, when you get to know her, you're going to be captivated by her. And there's a lot of things that I don't know about Shantini. So I'm actually excited for this show because her and I have worked in a different capacity. She's an amazing writer, and she supported organizations that I've worked with and writing and supporting their writing. But she has this whole world of gratitude that she lives in that has driven her to write the book, Manifest Anything You Want. So, and we'll, just so everybody knows, we'll have all of Shantini's links to her book, links to her website, links to anything she happens to mention in the show on the podcast description, which if you're on YouTube, it'll be below the video. And if you're on Podbean or Spotify or any of the podcast sites like Apple, it'll be in the description of the show. So don't fret. Just go back to the recording and scroll down a little bit, and you'll see all that information. Or you can always reach out to us at Creating Our Own Light at support at creatingourownlight.com. I'm always open for questions. And if you do have a question for Shantini, I'm sure she won't mind because I will cheat and forward that question to her directly to answer. So I'm so excited to have her here teaching us a bit about gratitude. She also has this signature energy protocol that she does called the One Healing Breath, and she's going to share that with us today. And I was reading her bio, and the one thing I did not know about her is she has a background in physics and engineering. So she's clearly super smart, smarter than me because I didn't go to school for that. But Shantini, you want to say anything to the audience before we
oh,
get rolling our discussion?
oh my gosh, Jeffrey, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your lovely show. I even love the title. I love the energy of it. And I tend to move through the world by tuning in and connecting in with the energy of what's behind what we see.
Yeah.
And it's been like you have this lovely, open-hearted, generous, beautiful energy flowing, and it's just such a pleasure. So thank you for inviting me, and that was such a lovely introduction that you had. So I'm
There.
so excited to be here and to have this conversation with you.
Well, great. Well, let's get started a bit. I think the first thing we need to do is just talk about, how this gratitude came into your life and how that, how this has become a foundation for you and how you live, and obviously writing the book. So I'm going to
Oh,
just start us off here, dear.
okay, sure. So this might sound a little bit strange, but I had like a bit of a up and down relationship with gratitude for the longest time, because you see it everywhere. You need like show gratitude, be appreciative when you're in the spiritual space, especially.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a spiritual person, and I know a lot of people around me are as well, and the people I speak to online, my clients, all of the people who read my books, who've read my book is they are spiritual people. They can connect with a higher power, God or universe, the universe, source,
Yeah.
energy, whatever you want to call it, right? The higher power. And whenever you are in that space, a lot of the time, if you've spent even 5 minutes in a spiritual space, I'm going to go ahead and say it's a bit of an exaggeration, but I'll hold stand by that. You're going to hear something about gratitude. You're going to hear you need to be in the space of gratitude, write a gratitude list, make gratitude a part of your life, do this, do that, and there are practices and all of that. So what happened with me though, Jeffrey, was, but this is me. So I used to be an extremely anxious person, a bit of a driven person. So when I see practices like you need to do this every day, you have to have 10 things to be grateful for, and you need to write them down every night or first thing in the morning. It I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. And I would sit with my journal and I'd be like, okay, what am I grateful for? So when I come up to, the first day, it's like 10, it flows easily. The second day, it's kind of like at 7, and I have to kind of struggle with the last three. Then the third day, it's like 4. And I'm like, I start to feel bad about myself. I
Mm.
started to do that. That was where I was going with it. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I what is the matter with me? I need to be more grateful than this. What I'm failing at this. And it felt more like something to do rather than I lost the experience of it, is what I want to say. I
Mm.
started to lose the experience of being grateful, and I started to be kind of like chasing after this to-do thing that I needed to get done and checked off my list. And I think a lot of people, since then I've talked about it, I mentioned it in my book as well, and a lot of people can relate because the feeling of gratitude is different from just writing a gratitude list.
Mm.
So then got to the point where I was like, wait a second, where is the gratitude in all of that? I lost it. So I was like, I need to step back. So I received the one healing breath which you mentioned earlier, as a divine download. It just came to me. I was in my kitchen. It was a Wednesday, I remember. And it just came to me. I heard it. I heard the words whispered in my ear. My intuition works in that way. I'm a clairaudient person, and
Yeah.
I see visions. So anyway, I heard that, and I immediately knew what to do with that. I understood it. I knew what I had to do with it. I was supposed to share it, and I knew what it was meant to create in my life. That feeling of safety, coming from the place of safety in order to manifest. So anyway, by the point when I was doing all of the gratitude work, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to use my one healing breath here. I'm going to use the practice, and it's a simple practice. 3 counts on the inhale, 6 on the exhale, visualizing the feeling or healing or energy that you require, like tuning into that energy that you need in the moment. And I started to do that a little bit more. And then I realized, wait a second, I don't need a gratitude practice. I can live in gratitude.
Mm.
So that was the revolution for me. That was also revolutionary for me, at least, because that is a completely different way of being than the person who just has 10 things to be grateful for every night and doesn't feel any of it. So, yeah, that's a long answer to your
No,
question.
no, it's a great answer. I've got so much more that I want to dig into a little bit. So in your book, you talk about transforming from the inside out, right? So you
Yeah.
you ha- you have this moment. I kind of wonder, it was that the I'll say this. Generally, I've found when you have
Mhm.
these, because I get them too, right? These visions,
Yeah, right,
these moments of clarity, and you're
right.
like, wow, what do I do with this? There's still a lot of uh kind of shakes up, that those bottles of salad dressing, and it's like oil based, and you shake it up and all this stuff's floating around.
I love
That's
that.
that's kind of what happens to our energy body, and there's just still a lot of things to clear out to really see
That's
things clearly. So you have this profound moment, you have this vision, you have this download, you try this protocol. Was that the foundational moment for you to jump into this gratitude journey? And that in that unique way, right? You're saying living it and breathing it. Was that Wednesday? Was that the moment where it all shifted? And share with our audience more of the practical stuff, right? Like, I don't want people to get the impression that it's a zap because it's never a
Oh,
zap, right? So, talk a little
yes.
bit about your journey after one. Was it your foundational moment? I'm thinking it was. That was like, oh, that was the break point, the beginning of the journey, if you will. But talk a little bit about that and about the journey that you went on towards this embodying gratitude.
Oh, Jeffrey, that's a wonderful question. Thank you so much for asking because so often we are like, oh, do this and it will change your whole life will change in an instant. And we know that we wish it was that way. We want it to be that way, but it's not that way.
Do we
In
really? Is the question,
yes,
right? Do we really? I mean,
do we really? A
yeah.
part of us wants that. So yeah, that is a great question. It wasn't an instantaneous um, transformation and total transformation.
Yeah.
It was an epiphany. It was a shift. However, it that is why the one healing breath, I guess, came to me, was given to me, because I have tried like meditation. I have tried all of those in yoga. And I'm like, who has time because of that anxiety thing that I had been living with since I was a kid. I could not sit still. I was like one of those people who I'd be bouncing off the walls. And I felt, as with the gratitude practice, I used to feel like a failure with the meditation piece as
Mhm.
well. So the one healing breath, when it dropped in for me, I could do it in seconds, small moments, many, many times a day. And it adds up. It absolutely adds up. Because when I was getting into that state of, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I'm freaked out about something, I would just do the one healing breath. And sometimes it wasn't just one healing breath, it was a series of one healing breaths.
Yeah.
But it would say, even as a series, it was like a minute or two at most, and then I would carry on with my day. It helped me to calm myself on every level, on an energetic level, in the body, mind, spirit, emotions. And it was something that I could actually do and weave into my day without feeling like I had to set aside 60 minutes. Because I've heard this advice before. If you don't have time to meditate, you definitely do need to meditate. And so, and that was like easy for you to say. That was what I used to feel about that, because it's like, how do you carve out the time? And when you're like you're pretty much almost all the time in an activated state, in a stressed activated state, it can feel like a lot. So yes, it took me like weeks and then months. Because I could do it on a daily basis, I started to feel a lasting, like, I got to the point where it started to change, as you said, you're right, from the inside, manifesting from the inside out. Things started to change for me fairly quickly, I would say. Still, it was in a few months. I would feel good in the moment, but that moment of feeling good started to stretch out further and further
Mm.
over a few months. So I used to take the one healing breath. I would feel good for like maybe a few minutes. And then after a few months, it would be a couple of hours. And then it stretched out more. So it starts to become the foundation of how I'm moving through life. And in terms of the gratitude piece, so all of this kind of happened around the same time. So I got the
Mhm.
download, and then I was doing I was attempting to do all of these other practices at the same time. And that gratitude and the 10 things that you need to list down thing was around the same time as the one healing breath download. And that's why I had the idea of, what, let me move in, let me like kind of get in, center myself with the one healing breath around other practices. So I started to use it, and I have this in my book as well. I started to use it with like tapping, with like yoga. That is also why I love it so much personally, the one healing breath, because it's flexible, it is quick, it can be done by just about anybody at any time. You can do it in front of everyone else and no one's going to know you're doing it. And you can feel the benefits of it without like I do it when I'm in a difficult conversation, for example, and it really brings you back to center in a lovely way, I must say. So yes, I hope that answers your
So now
questions.
everybody, yeah, so now everybody out there is going, oh, please, because, you know, we had this, as you know, 2 shows ago, we had Dawson Church on, and
Right.
you know, he's big in the meditation. He's got his eco meditation practice, which is excellent. And I find there's so many people out there that are just, I don't want to say resistant. It just they feel like failures with it. Exactly what you're
Yes.
talking about, right? Like I just can't get, you know, I'm missing or I missed 3 steps, and you're judging yourself. You must have been a really good student when you were a little
Oh
girl.
yeah. I was one of those annoying, front row setter.
Yeah, yeah, you're the teacher's pet. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the annoying
yeah.
one.
So, you know, you're so on top of things. I know that about you. So maybe I think it's time you just share the one healing breath with us and do it for us here.
Okay.
And we'll
Um,
all do it together. How about that?
Okay, let's do that together. Let's do it, Jeffrey. Let's everyone do it. And please, if you're like driving while you're listening to this, or you're handling like a knife, you're cutting something in your kitchen or something, now's not the time to do that. But if you come back to it later, or it's easy to remember, you can do it later on your own. But everyone else. So I'm going to so here's how it works. I'm going to kind of lay out what it entails, and then I'm going to take us through it if that's okay,
Awesome.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, perfect.
So what you would do on your own. So let's say you're not being guided through this. What you would do on your own, the first thing to think about is when you become aware of feeling anxious or feeling stressed. And this works in the manifesting space as well, really, really well, because there is a lot of, a lot of people talk about this, but there can be a lot of stress and anxiety around creating and design, because manifesting is essentially being intentional in your life, designing your life, creating your life, working with the universe and God and a higher power, to move towards the life that you feel called to. And we can have a lot of attachment, a lot of expectations, a lot of self judgment and criticism around that. So, on the surface, all of those practices in manifesting, for example, are lovely, like the vision board practices and affirmations and things like that. However, beneath the surface, there can be anxiety, like, oh, is this going to happen for me? Am I going to get this? All of that stuff. So, I use the one healing breath as well a lot in that space. And also, as a tool to center yourself and calm yourself, even if you're if it's not in the manifesting space. So I just wanted to say that as well. Now, what we do when we are trying to do that is to become aware of how you feel in the moment. So if you're stressed, or you're looking at, like, you're saying your affirmations and it's like not landing, or whatever it is, right?
Mm.
um Ask yourself, okay, I'm gonna stop, just take a moment to stop and ask yourself, what is, and this is like putting the intention out there. So if it's God that you're speaking to, you can speak to God. If it's a higher power, the universe, just put the intention out there. What is the healing feeling or energy that I need right now? So
Mhm.
that is the question. What is the feeling, healing, or energy? Or you can just say feeling or healing, one of those, right now. And just take a second. I promise the answer will drop in.
Mhm.
It will. Even if you don't believe you're particularly intuitive, it will drop in. And if you feel really stuck or blocked, you can choose something really fun, like the energy of ease, the energy of calm, the energy of joy. Pick something through the conscious mind that works as well. And then the next piece is to sit with that answer. So, for example, let's say you're doing one healing breath of ease. And what you do then is to connect to that energy. And how you do that is to bring up a vision, a thought, a memory. It could be a line from a movie, it doesn't matter. Whatever comes to mind that brings up that feeling of ease. So for me, a lot of the time I tend to go into a memory, but sometimes it's a vision. So ease could be watching the birds soar by. Like I'm on the 20th floor in my apartment, so I can see the birds at eye level. So watching them like soar, they're not even flapping their wings, they're just like being carried with the wind. That feels like ease to me. Just tuning into that energy, allowing yourself to receive it. So
Mm.
once you're in that space, and all of this, I'm taking a lot longer to explain it than it takes to actually do it, Jeffrey. So I'm explaining it now. So anyway, tuning into that energy of ease. And then what you do next is a simple thing. You just, with that intention of being in that ease, breathing in for 3 counts, breathing in ease for 3 counts, and breathing out again for 6. So when you're in that, and then closing your eyes exactly as you did, Jeffrey, holding for a few seconds, and then being in that energy, and then opening your eyes. That's how it works. And you don't have to count for 3 if you don't want to. As long as your out breath, excuse me, your exhale is longer than your inhale, that's wonderful because it helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is about help, which will help to calm your body physically. So I'm
Mm.
going to like run through it again. So I'm going to take
Okay.
us now. So
Okay.
I'm going to tune in, and I'm going to go with one healing breath of joy. Okay, for all of us. Like you would
Mhm.
choose it if you're on your own, but I'm going to pick for us right now. Okay, so I would love for anyone who can to like close your eyes if you're in a safe space, close your eyes. And if you can, bring both of your hands to your heart, over your heart, to bring your attention to your heart. And now I would like you to take a moment to envision, to remember, or to simply think about that feeling, that sensation of joy. It could be a memory, could be a vision. Anything that comes through is perfect. If nothing comes through, just the intention of that feeling of joy, bringing that into your space and your experience right now, tuning into that energy, letting yourself relax into it. And now I'm going to guide you through the one healing breath of joy. We'll be breathing in for 3 counts and breathing out for 6. Tuning into that beautiful feeling of joy. Breathing in, 2, 3, hold for a second. Feel that joy moving through your body, your spirit. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Staying with that energy for a moment. Feeling the joy swirl around you, immersed in it. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Mm.
And that
That's
was it.
wonderful. Yeah.
And it immediately shifts your energy into
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
space, right? And if it doesn't work in one breath, that's totally fine. Sometimes it takes a moment, and you can do 2 or 3 of that breath. So that was the one healing breath.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a great technique. I got a couple things uh, that'll probably, definitely lead us to our next question. But so the first thing is I know there are a lot of people out there, my wife being one of them, that um, does doesn't always see their intuition, their download. Sometimes they do, and then you don't acknowledge them. So when you said, "Hey, everybody out there, you will get these in the way you are meant to get them," and there's so many different ways. And much for my wife is if she can put herself in an environment that she can tap into that joy. So in her case, maybe looking at a beautiful tree or a flower or the sky or the sun and taking that moment with that technique seems like a perfect marriage for,
Exactly.
for those of you that aren't able to visualize maybe or able to, do downloads. The second thing, and which is I'm going to connect your technique to my friend Jesus. Um,
Yes.
so, you know, my love and my light. And but Jesus used to ask his disciples, I don't know if you know this or not, but
Mhm.
he used to ask his disciples, what do you seek?
Oh,
And he used that phrase, what do you seek?
oh, love it.
And that means in what he was putting in front of them was, what do you seek in your heart?
Mm.
And your technique really is that, obviously
Oh,
drawn out a bit. It's when you talk about it, and I want you to talk about this from your perspective. But the one thing I've kind of really began to live is that we call it the breathing prayer, right? That every breath is a prayer.
oh,
So it's
beautiful.
acknowledging, right, the gratitude acknowledgement you're talking about is being grateful even for the things that you might have perceived in the past that gave you anxiety or made you angry, or because if you can catch that moment and you can be grateful for that moment, the universe, God and Jesus, right, will then basically you'll get asked the question, what do you really want? What do you
Mm.
really desire? What's in your heart in the situation?
Mm.
So your technique basically took that, landed it back in the heart to ground you so that you can begin to make that next decision.
Exactly.
You choose how to act. So that's what you're talking about from the inside out. So I want you to take that reflection on you and
Okay.
talk about that journey, because people, I call it, or I actually had one friend of mine call it, actually a former employee. He said, well, these folks get caught up in the bliss ninny, is what he called. That's a word he used. They just want to be happy about everything and just smooth it
Yeah.
all over. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, that you're not willing to see that contrast, what is
Mm.
causing you to have that moment. So
Mm.
take that and run with that, because I'm sure you have a lot to say about that.
Oh, yeah. I am like waiting to jump in here. Great question, Jeffrey. Another fabulous question. So, yes, because we don't really, this is not about denying. So, it's not about toxic positivity and like just trying to like brush over what you're feeling. Because all emotions, all feelings, what we feel, frustration, anger, sadness, jealousy, all of those like so-called negative, and I'm using air quotes because feelings are messengers, they're visitors, they're telling us where we are in the moment. They're trying to like help us actually, even the pain, maybe even especially the painful ones. They're just trying to tell us, okay, you are here now and this is where you're at. What, and as you said, I love that, what do you seek, right? Like, what are you seeking? That is exactly what the one healing breath, I love that you connected that, Jeffrey. I so appreciate that because I did not know that that was what Jesus asked his disciples. And that is such a powerful, of course it's Jesus, so it's such a powerful transformative question, because in the moment anything can change in a moment. So coming back to what you said, that feeling of when you're in a so-called negative state, when you're in a painful state, it is so important to accept for the moment that that is where you are. You're sad, or you're angry, or you're frustrated, even if it's for a few seconds. That acceptance helps you get back into a place of clarity, because no feeling is final. All emotions pass, as we know. If you've
Yeah.
lived on this planet for like even 5 years or 7 years or whatever, if you're even like a 10-year-old kid, you'll be able to realize, like, what I'm saying is true. All emotions pass. And what happens in the moment, though, is that it feels like we are the emotion and the emotion is us. We are in that pain and the pain is us, and there is no separation. But there always is. There is a part of you, and some people call it the higher self, um, who is watching, who is observing. And doing this practice, there are other practices as well, but with one healing breath, I developed that. I nurtured the part of me that could step back in the moment and go, you're mad right now. You're angry. And you know what? That's okay.
Mm.
That's okay. In the eye of the storm, it's okay. That's how you feel. We accept that. Now what can we do about that? And to accept it before we move into doing something, whatever it is, whether it's a decision. In this case, I love to do the one healing breath practice. Again, it's not about jumping from anger to joy. And that is the reason why it's good to ask, what do I need right now? Sometimes it's just calm. Sometimes I even take in one healing breaths of like silence or twilight, one healing breath of twilight, one healing breath of sunrise. It can be any energy that comes to you in the moment. So gradually, gently accepting where you are and then shifting when you're ready. That is what I have to say, because I love that you asked this question. It is not about denying your emotions. It's not that, happy blissful thingy that a lot of the personal, sadly, in the personal growth and spiritual space, it's just about like, think positive.
That's right.
Everything's gonna fall into place. Just think positive. You had a negative thought, and that's why this is like happening to you. It's That's not true. Absolutely not true. All feelings are welcome, and all feelings are not final. So at the same time. So
That's
yeah.
beautiful. So, back at my first show, I told my story, and the big phrase that Jesus gave me at my moment of, I've talked about that and called it the dark night of the soul, but it's definitely was a place where I was not
Yeah. Yeah.
loving myself whatsoever. And he said, God loves you as you are today. There's nothing you need to change. And I said to him, are you sure about that?
I love
And
that.
for those of you that haven't heard my first show, you can hear it all in the first show. But he said, I will love you the same. And, it wasn't the words necessarily, it was the energy of it. It was the perfect peace and safety and everything. He said, I will love you the same if you choose to lay there. I was in a psychiatric ward at the time, laying on a bed, crying like a baby.
Mm,
Uh, I'll love you the same if you choose to stay there as if you choose to get up.
mm,
And
mm.
when you realized that it was all your choice, what came out of my mouth that morning to my psychiatrist at the time was, I met the devil and he is me. And I didn't know what I meant by it at that time, but I know now, right? It's all of those things, all of those things we consider the devil or the dark or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. Once we put them outside of ourselves and we become the victim of that, it's only going to show us that,
yeah,
right? And
exactly.
and once we choose, we step beyond that, right? So it,
Exactly.
that's that's what you start. But what I want to kind of get
Beautiful.
into your beautiful manifestation energy, now that we've kind of laid the groundwork, that this is not a positivity movement, right?
No,
It's that
absolutely.
sometimes you're really dealing with something pretty serious, and one
Yes.
healing breath is a great tool to center, get in your heart, and then choose your path forward. Um, so let me shift a little bit to the show. So the show is about this. I mean,
Exactly.
you're talking, it's unlocking the miracles within. So the miracle is you are the miracle. You are the
Yes.
divine creation of God, but also all of those um, miracles, right? They're things that are unexpected. They're things that are you can't imagine. They're things that surprise you, overwhelm you, shock you, or supernatural. There's all kinds of miracles, right? They're all there waiting for you to unlock them. And that journey is becoming aware of them and then setting an intention, right? To clear, I call it clearing your lens so you can move forward. So I want you in your work, in your book, in your journey with gratitude, walk us through this, how you cultivate it, how you grew it, how you nurture it, how you now live it. I know the one healing breath is a great technique, but I also know there's more to it than just that one
Of
technique.
course. Of course. I had to, like, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I I can talk about how we tend to push away how we feel, because that is exactly what I did. I denied myself because it is our birthright as humans. We have spiritual beings, but we are in a human as there's a saying, right? Like you're a spiritual being in a human experience. I can't recall, but I think you
Yeah,
know
I know
what
what you're talking about. Yeah, I always
I.
mess up phrases too. So go.
I'm so sorry, I can't remember. But yes, we are having a human experience. We are spiritual, we are everlasting, but we are in a physical body in the physical realm. And it is our, I would say, our birthright, I would use that word, to experience the entire spectrum of what it means to be human,
Mm.
uh, good and the so-called bad. For the longest time, I pushed away because as you said accurately earlier, Jeffrey, I was a type A, front row student, and I had to do everything right, perfectionist, name it. And I worked like I would not take myself into consideration at all in any way, including the fact that I needed breaks, like when I'm working, right? I used to just go on for hours and hours, like 10, 12, whatever, 14-hour days and things like that. It always felt like I was never good enough.
Mm.
Just it was the opposite, exactly what you said. I love that story. I know your story. I listened to that. It's beautiful, and I would recommend that everybody listen to that. It is just a yeah, it's just it's a miracle. Exactly that. What happened with you, Jeffrey? Absolutely. So yes, I did feel that. I was like, I was never good enough. I had to keep trying harder. And it got me to the point where I started to feel like I was up against a wall. No matter what I did, nothing changed in my external environment. Meaning that because I grew up in a household, in a single parent household, my mom did her best, and I have an sister, older sister, and it was great. I lost my dad when I was 7 years old, and I
Mm.
was very close to my dad. And it was such a shock to have him there one day. Because when you're seven, it's not like you really get what that means. Because he was there one day and gone the next. That's what it felt like. And he, of course, didn't come back, and not in a physical sense. He never came back on the physical realm. And that whole journey after that, there was a lot of like, as you can imagine, my mom was grieving. There was a lot that we went through when I was young, and that got me into that state of always being like, I need to be there for my family. I need to be a good girl. I need to be perfect. I don't want my mom to be stressed. And then later on, that extended to friends, that extended to other members of my family, extended out to my boss at work, and all of that. So being in that state became unbearable for me, as in I could not function well. I
Mm.
mean, I looked like I was functioning well on the surface. I kept it going, but it was a thin line. I would fall into a state of um, feeling a lot of frustration and anger. I would within myself, like even within myself, I would be sitting in I'd be on my own, and a thought would enter my mind about so and so and what they said to me last week or whatever, and I'd be like, how could they? This is terrible. I would get into a spiral. And I was like, what is happening here? What is happening to me? And at that point, I had already started, I was aware of the law of attraction. I was working with that.
Mm.
But, I would say affirmations like, you're a success or whatever. Look in the mirror,
Yeah.
say that. And I was like, no, I'm a profound failure. I had that voice in my head. And or I would say, I've got this, fabulous clients and a very successful business or whatever. And it would say, the voice in my head would say, no, you don't. No, you
Mm.
don't. You're lying. So I just got to that wall where I could not move. I felt like I was a stranger to myself. Within myself, it's a little bit hard to explain, but I think you can get it. I felt like a stranger in my own life. And that is when actually the one, and I used to try everything like Tony Robbins and all of those guys.
Right. Yeah.
They're great in their own way, but it took me only to a particular point, and I could not go further. As I said, every single thing felt like I was failing at it. Meditation, I was a failure at meditation. I was a failure at affirmations. I was a failure at vision boards. whatever it was, everything. And then that was around the time when the one healing breath came in for
Hmm.
me. And that's when it started to shift. And I noticed something else as well, Jeffrey. I never felt safe in my own physicality. I did not feel safe it wasn't like anyone was attacking me or anything, thankfully. Not, they were not out to get me or anything, but I just felt like, unsafe in my own body, in my own mind, in my own environment. And the one healing breath brought that safety back for me. I guess in a way, depending on how you use it's almost a prayer. It's almost like a prayer, like breathing in that energy, asking for what you need. It is in a way. I never thought about it that way before, except like right now, that's just dropped in for me right now. It's almost like a prayer. So it put me back into a sense of safety, and little by little, it was a drop at a time. It was a drop. I can't emphasize I need to emphasize that. I can't tell you how slow it was in the beginning. It was literally one breath at a time. And what's beautiful about all of, and then of course I layered it on with all of the other practices like tapping and everything else. I layered it on with all of the other practices, and it started to work. Affirmations started to feel like they were landing. Being able to, and visualizations started to feel like they were landing, because I had started to create that foundation of inner safety, that connection within myself.
Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit? I know we're gonna probably have a couple more things here, and then we're gonna have to wrap it up because I know I'm just captivated by you, and
Oh,
we can go all night. So,
forever. Yes, yes.
but I do want to get to some practical things too. But I wanted you to just share a little bit about that feeling when you say safety. I
Mm,
actually think there's a bit of an epidemic in our world. I see it a lot in women, but I know it's in men. They just cover it up better, right? That they don't feel like they're enough. Like whether it's being a mother or working or being a wife or having a partner, whatever that is, right? However that shows up in the world, it's never enough, never enough time, never, never doing
yeah,
enough at work.
exactly.
I've seen it in my family with my loved ones, and I know it's pretty prevalent. But talk a little bit about because it comes through differently for different people. I asked this to Dawson too on his meditation. Like, how do you know you're there? Like,
Oh,
where's
that's
that moment where you know, okay, I'm grounded, I'm calm. Yeah.
okay. So it's different for everyone. Yes, that is actually it. Again, you asked the best questions, Jeffrey. Thank you. This is so much fun for me. It's different for everyone. However, there are some clues even in your physical body that you can look for. So I'll start there. Okay. So one of the things is you might feel a sense of opening around your heart, in your
Mhm.
chest. You can feel your shoulders drop, your jawline, the space between your eyebrows. You can feel like your breath, as in when you're breathing naturally, you can feel your heartbeat slow. Your breath starts to become a little bit like, you're not breathing rapidly, you're breathing naturally and calmly.
Mhm.
So those are the physical sensations to look out for. The other feeling is, and I'm just going to give this like an umbrella thing, there is that sense of being connected in your body and within yourself, like you're centered within. A lot of the time when we are stressed and anxious, it's almost in a strange way, it can almost feel like an out of body thing. It's like you're in 100 different places at the same time. You're fragmented. Your thoughts are fragmented. Your energy, if you are someone who's attuned to energy, your energy starts to feel fragmented. You can't think one thought at a time. It feels like 100 thoughts
Mm.
happening in every second. But when that safety starts to set in, because a lot of people don't even think of it as safety, They're not walking around thinking, I don't feel safe. That's not what they're thinking. Safety can show up, feeling unsafe, sorry, can show up as perfectionism, can show up as anger and frustration, can show up as impatience. It can show up even as envy or one and feeling triggered. All of these things, when you really break it down and bring it down to its essence, it's you not feeling safe in the moment. That's what's actually happening. So when you bring yourself back into a sense of safety, feeling protected, feeling connected with yourself, those other emotions start to diminish, start to dissipate, start to like let go. Like it's not holding, you don't feel like it's stuck to you. It starts to release, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to throw a couple other little ones in there for you that, because I think people do get confused. So some people think of a moment of elation, right? Which to me, when you're trying to calm and center, you're not trying to leave your body, right? And even though elation's a good thing, like even jumping into a state of joy, that's what I mean, yes, you were bringing in joy and setting your intention to bring in joy, but you're not doing it to jump into a state of bliss. You're doing it to be centered in your body. So I want people to really kind of begin to coalesce what you're talking about, because I think people can get lost in that. Oh, I just need to bring myself into a blissful state. And really, what you're trying to do, and the way I'm reading what you're saying to me, and it is very true for me, is you're trying to get rid of the judgment, the worry, the fear, the anxiety, the need to experience some level, but you're really getting into that space where you can clearly observe whatever
Yes.
emotions are going on so that you can set your intention on what decision to make. Because the
So,
truth is addiction is another thing that occurs.
yes.
Addiction to judgment of yourself, depression, anxiety, or addiction to alcohol or drugs to escape, or even addiction to sex and things that people might see as blissful, right? You
Yes.
there, that's not being grounded in your body. That's not being centered with the universe and making an attention. So I wanted to throw that because that's what I was
Love that.
gleaning from you. Um, but what I want to do, because now we're coming down to land the plane here. Um, I love practical tips for people, and I think you're loaded with them. If somebody came into you and was asking you for advice and they're overwhelmed, they're overwhelmed at work, they're overwhelmed in their relationship, they're overwhelmed, um, they just don't feel like they can ever get it. They're a seeker like you and I. They're trying to learn new things and trying all these different techniques. My dear Shantini, you're going to simplify it right now for them and just give them three pieces of homework, three simple things you would give them to do in the next hour or two that's going to help them start to shift.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so what I would say first, of course, you probably guessed that one of them is going to be my practice, right? But what
Yeah.
I want to say first is, um, as I was, and you summarized it and talked about it so beautifully. You like brought it all back into with like a bunch of just a few sentences. It is about like coming back, right, to that centered place that we're talking about, be not trying to escape the body. So I would say the first thing to do, because one of the reasons it feels overwhelming is because we are up here in our minds, or we are even outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're walking around. I like to say, this would sound weird, but a lot of us, and me included in the past, I was like a floating head. I I was moving through life like floating around. I was in my head. I didn't physically feel my body. That's going to sound weird for some people, but I think a lot of people can relate.
Yeah.
We don't always feel our body. And that is going to send a signal, even on a scientific, from a scientific level, from the brain and how it works. When we don't feel our body, our survival brain goes into activation. It goes into fight or flight. It feels like something is wrong because we are not feeling our body. That is one of the reasons we can get pulled into that state of overwhelm or even panic. And I've had panic attacks in the past, and it's just like you're not even there anymore. It's just bad. So I would say the first thing to do is to bring yourself back into the body. And this is a little practice again. I know you like practical things,
Yeah.
Jeffrey. So this is about this, if possible, as soon as you can, I would say, go to a place that is quiet and where you can be alone. Sit on the floor if you can, but you can also use a chair or be on your bed or something or a sofa, but with your back against the wall. This is important. You need to sit with your back against the wall. If you want, you can, like, if you're on the floor, your legs stretched out in front of you with the back against the wall. And there's a reason for this. There's a scientific reason for this. Our survival brain, which is the unconscious part of our mind, the subconscious, it's always vigilant. This is the ancient part of the brain. So a little bit of science here. This is the ancient part of the brain, the version of us, and it's still there, where we used to be out in the savannah, we had animals everywhere, and you had to be hyper vigilant. That's it. You had to be vigilant. You had to be vigilant about your environment, and it senses that when you are not against something that is safe, the wall is safe. There's nothing behind you. So when
Mhm.
your survival brain can detect that, when your brain can detect that because you can feel it with your body, you immediately on a physical level start to calm down. That helps. Even if you're in a bit of a state, you're feeling anxious in the moment, that helps. And then, of course, the one healing breath or any practice, you want to do your tapping, whatever it is. But I like, of course, my one healing breath. I combine it with other practices sometimes. And that brings you back to that state that we were talking about, which is a choice point. Because when you feel overwhelmed in your relationship, in your business, in all of those things, what we do need to make is some choices and some decisions. But when we are in that state, it's impossible because we're being pulled in 100 different directions. It feels that way anyway at the same time. So I would say do all of that, the back to the wall, the one healing breath, and then what is one decision that you can make right now? And that could be as ridiculously, so to speak, as simple as drinking a glass of water, bringing yourself into the space where you are, being present. And then what is the next decision? Bringing it down to one step at a time. That is how I did it when I was in a really, really not good, we've all been there in a bad space. And that is what I say to my clients. That is what I would do to answer
That's
your
amazing. So it's perfect. You know what the question I ask
tell me.
is, I say, what can I do in this moment that is the most loving act for myself?
Oh, I love that.
And then what can I do next that is the most loving for those that are involved in this?
Oh, beautiful,
But
Jeffrey.
I will encourage everybody, this is what Shantini is saying is perfectly beautiful. Do it. The most important thing is celebrate when you catch, I call it catching an emotion or a thought or a feeling that is out of alignment with you. Because the only reason it's coming into your awareness, whether it's anger or fear or frustration, is because it's out of alignment with who you truly are.
Yes.
And when you catch it, celebrate the catch. That's where I
I
give
love it.
gratitude. I say, God, thank you for showing me that I had judgment there. Thank you for showing me that I was feeling unheard or unseen or whatever
Mm,
it is.
I
So
love that.
what you talk about is beautiful, but the trick is, folks, the trick is, and Shantini knows this, is it's the catch. You got to
Yeah,
know. If you don't know when it's occurring, you can't act on it.
exactly.
And you got to catch that energy in the moment. So I pray for all of you out there that you're able to begin to catch. And if you catch, it starts off maybe 1%, 2% a day of the emotions that are throwing you off. That'll grow to 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, and then all of a sudden, all day, you're going to be catching all these things that are out of alignment with you, and you're going to be able to make decisions that help that align to you better. And I think these techniques that Shantini shared are absolutely perfect and simple, and you don't have to
Mm.
meditate for 30 minutes. You know, you don't have to go do ayahuasca and get all high and jump off the planet. All these things that people do. And I'm not knocking any of them, it's just I think people do generally seek
Mm.
escapism.
Mm.
And when all those emotions overwhelm you, you come to a breaking point. Mine was in a psychiatric ward. Yours was in a moment where, the
It
divine
felt like
touched you and gave you a download and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, this is not the way to live," right? Um,
exactly.
in the Christian faith that I'm in, they would say, "Well, that's because we're we're um, we're in sin. We're separate from God.
Mm.
We're separate from our highest self. We're separate from, the Holy Spirit is what the church would call the highest self. We're separate from that which we truly are, which
Yes. Yes.
so you get to wrap this up. I want you to share a bit about your business, your book, where people can find it. I know we're going to have all that information on the description, but thank you so much for having your beautiful smile, your beautiful energy, your beautiful wisdom. And hey, wrap it up with a little pitch here of how they find you.
Oh, I can't believe that like we are at the end of this because it feels like we started 5 minutes ago. I always have such a lovely time when I get to chat with you, Jeffrey. And thank you so much. Yes, my book is called, as Jeffrey said earlier, Manifest Anything You Want. And you can find me on my website, shantaniraja.com. And also on Instagram at Shantani Raja. And yeah, I'm in a space now where I am moving into sharing more of this new way, like to bring the somatic, the physicality, the body, the safety in the physical, in our physical selves, in the space of creating what we want in our life. Because exactly as Jeffrey says, it's so easy to reach for those peak experiences, for bliss, and it can so sadly so easily lead to addictions and other things. And actually, at the end of the day, manifesting anything you want is about bringing yourself back home to yourself, to be who you truly are. In fact, my book was originally called How to Manifest Anything You Want by Being Yourself. That was
Mhm.
the original title, but it was too long. So we had to shorten it. So, but it is about that. It is, and if your faith, depending on your faith and your belief, being yourself is in connection with God. It's in connection with the universe, in connection with your own higher self, whatever your belief is, whatever your faith is. And I want to, and I have seen this. I think of the body as the divining rod. When you're back in your body, you can bring all that is up in the ether, your ideas, your vision, your prayers, you can bring it through the body and bring it into reality. It has to involve the somatic side of things. So I am excited to share more of that in the manifesting space, which is lovely, but a lot of the time it's about thinking, it's about thoughts, it's about just being positive. But in my experience and my work, I have seen that there's a missing piece, and that is, you know, bringing yourself back home to the body.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So I have this thing where some shows are just energetically how it works. I wrap us up with a prayer, and I just get the sense for all the people listening that the prayers needed. So, and the Shantini, this is for you too, my dear. So um, Heavenly Father, open up our hearts, our minds, our beings, our eyes, our ears, and all that is us to all that is your divine and love, joy, and peace. Show us, Lord, touch our hearts. Show us how uniquely we are designed by you, how much of a gift and a precious gift, how much we're loved and fully seen. And even though we're not feeling it in that moment, let us know that that door is always open for us to reach out to do the one healing breath and reconnect to you, Lord. Thank you so much for blessing. Bless all these people out there, especially the ones that are listening to this and maybe are dealing with some hard times. Give them
Mm.
that breath, Lord. Breathe in for them. Amen.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, Jeffrey, that was just beautiful. I could feel it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, bless you, dear. I love having you here, and I'm sure our audience is going to love this show, and I look forward to sharing it with the world.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.